Hello, honeys. Welcome to the Beesness that was intended for August 27th, but got delayed because yours truly moved apartments. I know I should have been a little more proactive, let you know that that was a possibility, that I would be overly distracted. But here we are, got the episode for you, ready to go. And since we have no further administrative announcements or anything like that, let's dive right on in. We had two main follow-up headlines from the second to last week of August. The first, Banksy's gorilla goes down. An official statement posted on the London Zoo's website last week explained that the decision to remove the artwork was made in part to provide zoo staff with a break before resuming operations after a mass influx of visitors to see this most recent piece in the week before that. Still, the zoo expressed happiness about this significance, the moment for them. It's related to art history so tangibly and stated that they're doing this because they really want to preserve the work properly. Catherine England, the CEO of the zoo, is quoted in Art News as saying, "We know the power animals have to inspire and engage people. We're thrilled by the joy this artwork has already brought to so many, but primarily we're incredibly grateful to Banksy for putting wildlife in the spotlight," end quote. All the same, it's pretty notable that the gorilla is the 5th out of 9 total to be stolen in the case of the wolf, removed in the case of the big cat, or defaced in the case of the rhino. As Hype Art articles about the situation point out, this is both a good and a bad thing. Quote, "The frequent removals and defacing of the artist's work speak to the beauty of ephemera in street art," end quote. But for those of us who are not based in London and won't be visiting anytime soon, the removal, destruction, thievery is all still kind of disappointing. We also finally got a why from Banksy via Art News, honeys. Quote, "He hoped the artworks would cheer people with a moment of unexpected amusement as well as to gently underline the human capacity for creative play rather than for destruction and negativity," end quote. We also received word that Frank Lloyd Wright's Price Tower will face auction after its closure. The latest news releases say its public auction is scheduled for October, but that this auction does not include the art collections inside the buildings. These will be addressed in a separate phase of ownership transition. A small snag already, though, the Frank Lloyd Wright Building Conservancy said they were not notified of this auctioning, this sale. If that claim is true, the current owners would be in violation of the preservation easement. So, honeys, you may be asking yourselves, why do we keep following this story? Partially because it is about Frank Lloyd Wright's only standing skyscraper, but also because we're finding that it's part of a potentially bigger trend. Several major works of modern architectural heritage have seen threats to their survival in some way or another lately. For examples, we can look to past Beesness stories like Frank Lloyd Wright's son's Lloyd Wright's The Wayfarers Chapel, which had to move after suffering extensive damage due to accelerated land movement in its former home of the Palos Verdes Peninsula. Another example would be, even last week, the Rothko Chapel of Houston becoming indefinitely closed due to Hurricane Beryl damages. These ongoing closures and damages are concerning because these buildings are irreplaceable pieces of art and history. In our first institutional legal-related story, workers from the Noguchi Museum walked out in protest of a new keffiyeh ban last week. The significance of these actions lies in part with the history of the Noguchi Museum. Located in Queens, New York City, it in part honors the life and legacy of sculptor Isamu Noguchi, an artist who faced discrimination and voluntary internment as a Japanese American, and later went on to make broad perspective works that often address political themes, including crimes against humanity. So some background on the staff actions leading up to this walkout. Museum leadership instated its no keffiyeh policy reportedly on August 14th after a single staffer wore the Palestinian headscarf on site. Many museum employees then signed a petition against this policy and began demanding that no disciplinary action be taken against staffers who wore the garment or take part in protests against the policy. So the first work stoppage happened pretty much at that point on August 15th. In this most recent walkout, however, almost 50 out of 70 total employees participated. The employees' concerns is that this internal dress code banning keffiyehs is distinctly anti-Palestinian. Our sources for today say that the workers see the ban as a form of censorship, say that it's particularly worrisome and hypocritical given the history of the museum's namesake. One staff member in particular said, quote, "A keffiyeh ban not only fails to support our Palestinian-affiliated colleagues, but was also immediately weaponized against a Black employee," end quote. Obviously, this is becoming a serious source of internal conflict for the museum. Yet on August 21st, the staff got an internal email from director Amy Huao that was also reviewed, confirmed by Art News, saying that the ban would remain in place, supposedly because an employee's appearance, quote, "should not create a disruption in the workplace," end quote. So we've mentioned it before, honeys, but further evidence the art world is increasingly becoming involved in and taking sides in Israel's war on Palestine. We've mentioned in past Beesness stories, you may have seen in your own encounters of news headlines, that in New York City and beyond, art institutions have faced criticism and protests by pro-Palestine groups for these institutions' perceived silence on Israel's various assaults on Gaza, which so far has claimed 40,000 lives, according to Palestinian health authorities. And more than that, we're seeing that museums and arts organizations are really struggling to address the various concerns of different audiences as well as artists and other stakeholders, and some are handling it much better and some much worse than others. For example, MoMA apologized back in March for an incident wherein 2 visitors were denied entry while wearing a keffiyeh, and as we've mentioned in a couple of different Honey Drop stories, there's a growing number of artists and curators who have publicly supported Palestine and who have said their events were canceled, exhibitions were altered without their consent, residency offers have been rescinded once that support became clear to the institutions behind these events, exhibitions, residencies, etc. The reason we're paying such close attention to these, what I called worse handlings of things, the rescinding of offers, the canceling of exhibitions, so on, is that it's a problem because it blocks public discussion. It blocks artistic expression. We have, honeys, gotten to the point where back in May, the New York-based nonprofit National Coalition Against Censorship released the Art Censorship Index, which is an online database to track the growing list of censorship accusations in the U.S. That's where we're at. I'm not necessarily trying to freak you out, but I'm trying to, make it clear that we are at a very serious point in our lack of ability to have conversations in this country. The vandalism spike we've seen this month has continued, unfortunately. We've got 2 news stories in that regard. The first, vandals beheaded a war memorial statue near Dover in the UK. After midnight on August 14th, the Tommy and Women in War memorials in Guston's Village Green were attacked. Spokespeople for the Kent police have said that officers have visited the village, they're reviewing CCTV footage, they're going on with further inquiries to identify and arrest any responsible people. Local governing officials and former veterans called the act despicable. Others quoted in our source article say it was heartbreaking for the community. And back stateside, Traverse City art installations were removed after repeated bouts of vandalism. The works in question were 2 sculptures depicting blue humanoid figures with deer heads called Spirit of the Forest. They were created by artists Steve and Dorota Coy. Though the works were originally part of the Arts Commission's rotating art exhibits located along Boardman Lake Loop Trail, starting late last month, they were destroyed by an unknown suspect or suspects. After additional vandalism to one of the sculptures was committed recently, the Traverse City Arts Commission said the remaining sculptures would be removed. As we've seen with this insane, in my mind, number of vandalism-related stories this summer, increasingly, people are thinking that it's okay to deface, attack, steal art. Last week also saw the nonprofit group For Freedom's stage art installations around the DNC in Chicago. The 6 total billboards featured artists like Carrie Mae Weems, Christine Wong Yap, Ebony G. Patterson, and more. The project also includes 4 photographs recreating the imagery of Norman Rockwell's paintings of the Four Freedoms, as well as a permanent mural commission by Jake Troiley. Put up on August 5th, they'll be on public view through the end of October, placed mostly near this year's Democratic National Convention. Other partners behind the project include the Movement Voter Fund, a voter mobilization network, as well as the civic and cultural agency Gertie. The why may seem a little obvious, but it's the hopes of all the organizations behind these efforts that they will increase civic engagement ahead of the national election in November. Said For Freedom's Associate Director Taylor Brock, quote, "It's not about directly being at the DNC. It's more so thinking about how do we infuse joy and play and community building into these spaces," end quote. Co-founder of the same group, Eric Gottsman, added, quote, "It's important for us organizationally, but also ideologically, to stake out a position that is anti-partisan, against partisanship, not just middle of the road, but really challenging notions of what partisanship means," end quote. A quick one from our auction sales and events category. A $35 million Monet will lead Christie's first sale at its new Asia headquarters. The evening sale of 20th and 21st century works will take place at Hong Kong on September 26th. The multi-million-dollar work in question is titled Nymphaeus, created 1897 through 99, and is estimated at Hong Kong's $200 million to Hong Kong's $280 million, which in US dollars is between $25 and $35 million. This considerable price tag makes the Monet one of the most valuable Western artworks ever offered at auction in the Asian continent. We care about this headline, honeys, because it shows that auction houses are continuing to bet on affluent Asian collectors' passions for Western art, that market is continuing to expand, even when others, such as the American and European, have fallen short this season. That's a story for another time, but believe you me, I've seen the headlines in New York Times, Forbes, Art News, and others if you want to check them out yourself. A bit of an oddball, funny story because we covered quite a bit of heavy things this episode. A large bust of Elon Musk is being towed around Texas by a Cybertruck because of a new NFT. A headline from that week reads, "The 9-foot-tall sculpture is being towed on this flatbed behind a Tesla around the city of Brownsville, Texas. The city was likely chosen because of its nearness to the new headquarters of SpaceX and its Starbase industrial complex. And a small note, this sculpture is painted bronze, not made of the actual metal." And like I said, the why is hilariously weird. The project is the idea of a French artist and tech engineer who goes by Louis the 22nd. He said that the main goal of this project is basically a revival of a Reddit meme from 6 years ago, a bad drawing of the billionaire and SpaceX founder. Louis had the idea earlier this year after himself and his digital artist collective commissioned a large mural of the same bad drawing from Reddit with the words "Occupy Mars" stenciled across. The Art News source article for this story says that the artist is not concerned at all with the actual NFT, not concerned with the falling sales of NFTs in general, 45% last quarter, but, quote, "It's just a funny way to represent this meme in other ways. We don't care about the market. We don't care about anything. We just want to have fun. We want to do positive stuff, good projects. And we know that in the long run, it will always pay back when you work with the right people," end quote. Just emphasizes this idea to do something very striking and crazy. And Louis the 22nd, I do believe you have pulled it off. And one more discovery before we go. A British window cleaner has received some of his long-awaited validation that he has discovered the first ever portrait of William Shakespeare, possibly worth £200 million. The laborer in question is Stephen Wadlow of Aylesbury, Bucks, who said for years he's been struggling to be heard, be taken seriously with his inquiries in the academic world regarding the painting because he's a working-class tradesman. Wadlow has been trying to validate the painting since his antiques dealer father phoned him in 2012 while watching a documentary on the bar to say, "Hey, that painting looks just like him." The father had bought the painting from the Great Tew estate in Oxfordshire in the 1960s, and once his father suggested it really might be Shakespeare, Stephen began investigating. One of the things that stood out to me about this story, honeys, is that Wadlow is concerned about much more than the money. He wants to be right. He wants to widen and win the debate over the authenticity of the painting, and that's why he's seeking this validation. I understand that completely. I've been there 1,000 times, and it seems as though he has gotten some of this validation now. The work has been x-rayed, analyzed by art history experts, and scientifically dated to around 1595 when the bard was 31. The same experts went on to say that not only is the painting from the right time, it is an original itself, meaning no under or over paintings, and even looks like the one authenticated portrait of Shakespeare. However, as I've hinted, this case is not entirely closed. Some are still arguing over whether it is Shakespeare, but if it is, according to at least one reputable dealer, this painting would be worth that £200 million. All right, honeys, those are our updates, our headlines, our hand-picked, curated stories for you from the week of the 18th through the 24th of August. Hope you've enjoyed. Hope you're having a good start to your September, and stay hydrated. Take care of yourselves. We'll talk soon. This podcast and this episode were created, produced, hosted, and researched, as well as fact-checked by yours truly, Celia Bugno. It was edited by our brand new sound engineer and producer of our intro music, Chris Meinhold. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe on all of your favorite streaming platforms, as well as your social medias.